From the News Channel 8 studios, let's talk live with your hosts, Natasha Barrett and Melanie Hastings.
These days, who isn't living with tons of stress in our lives? It's, there's road rage on any road in D.C. when you're coming into work, or you're worried about your bills. Everybody has something on their mind.
That's so true, isn't it? Dr. Ronald Alexander is with us today, and he is a psychotherapist and author of the book Wise Mind, Open Mind, and he is going to tell us a few easy tips that should keep all of us grounded when we're feeling so stressed out. Good to see you, Doctor.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
So stress, it's all part of life, right? Everybody deals with it.
And we're constantly experiencing stress, both at home and in the workplace. And the fundamental thing is to look at stress as a positive rather than as a negative.
I think some people might hear that and go, what?
Well, the famous researcher Hans Selye actually said people who have more stress live longer lives, are more creative, and are more resilient.
Is that right? Do you think that that's, the more stress, it has something to do with how they handle that stress?
Wonderfully said. It's the handling. It's like having a rudder in the sailboat of the self. And mindfulness meditation, which my book is about, teaches you to have a rudder in the sailboat of self so that you can get through the difficult waves and learn to navigate and keep the ship of self afloat.
Well, when do we know if it's a problem, if we've got too much stress in our lives and it's hurting our health?
Usually the main signs, of course, are our body, and our body starts to break down. And either we get colds, or we get flus more frequently, or we get ulcerative colitis, or migraine headaches, or we get high blood pressure, or we get some form of intestinal pains. That means slow down, take what I call a mindful pause, sacred pause every few minutes throughout the day, even if you're in the car and somebody yells at you for cutting them off because you weren't thinking or you were looking at something. Take a deep breath in and relax and say to yourself, it's okay.
It's not worth it. And I think a lot of people get caught up in that. You talk about meditation in your book, and there are people out there that think, okay, was that just me getting, in a dark room, sitting there and humming? But that's not all what you mean.
No.
Explain what you mean, the options for people.
Real meditation, of course, I've spent years in Japan and in India sitting on a cushion or in a dark cell or a cave. But as a Westerner and a Western psychologist, real meditation, and the way that I teach it in corporate America, is meditation in action. So like right now, there's a way that we're communicating where I'm listening to you, you're listening to me, and I'm paying attention to my breath so that I slow down and I make a space to hear where you're coming from. So the core of wonderful mindfulness meditation is to be mindful when you're eating. They say to be mindful when you're brushing your teeth, mindful when you're listening to your superiors, or you're managing someone across or managing them
let's
down.
talk about that. You said mindful when you're eating, and if we all think about it, we're usually doing 10 different things when we're eating. Our phones are right next to us, or the TV's on, or maybe you're listening to something else. We're never just doing one thing, are we?
Never. We're multitasking constantly. We're drinking our cappuccino, we're eating our bagel, and texting on our BlackBerry.
And driving.
iPhone.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, and so the key is to begin to slow down and start to pause, start to wait, start to take breaths throughout the whole day, and do what I call take a mindful pulse, in the same way that if you have high blood pressure, you're supposed to take your pulse throughout the day. And so if you slow down and tune in, you take a mindful pause and you say, what am I feeling right now? And is it positive? And if so, breathe and amplify that and experience more pleasure. If it's neutral, okay, just steady as you go.
So you can manage this yourself, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we teach. And as a medical psychologist, I teach in what's called, at the UCLA program in the David Geffen School of Medicine, holistic and integrated behavioral approaches of what the patient can do to take better care of him or herself and their family. For example, developing, using meditation so that you develop mindful kids.
You make it sound so simple. So why do you think most of us can't get past the stress in our lives and actually do this to make ourselves, what, more healthy?
Most of the time, it's two things. One is avoidance. We just avoid. We oftentimes avoid, why don't we go to the gym? Why don't we eat better?
It's no fun, right?
Right. The second thing is that there's oftentimes a fear that if I slow down and I become more mindful and I slow the rhythm of my high-paced life, I won't be as creative. Like, for example, I work in the entertainment industry with lots of musicians and filmmakers and writers. And the number one thing everyone is afraid of is, if I practice mindfulness, am I going to lose my manic depressiveness that helps me to...
What helps me get everything going?
Yeah, and time again, I have to reassure people who are bipolar that it's okay to come down and not be so manic.
So do you think there's people out there that kind of would like to buy into it but maybe resist the whole idea?
Yes, and part of why they resist it is, of course, fear of change. And the other thing is mindfulness. It comes out of an Eastern tradition. But the beauty of it is it's a standalone practice, in that it doesn't have to be associated with any religion or any spirituality. It's an exercise. It's like, in my book, Wise Mind, Open Mind, I came up with a term called building mind strength. So mindfulness helps you in the same way that if you go to the gym and at first your muscles are weak, that you start out, do slow weights, and then you get strong. Mindfulness meditation builds mind strength. So you start with a distracted mind, and over time, your mind becomes much more focused, much more concentrated.
Sounds
makes
easy.
sense.
It sounds sort of like what an actor does when they say they're in the moment.
Yes.
They kind of put everything aside, and then for that minute or whatever, they are like somebody else.
And when an actor, and the actors that I work with, when they say they've had a moment, they're truly mindful because they're right here and now. And then all of this core creativity bursts forth, and then they give a brilliant peak performance.
Not distracted anymore. Good tips.
Wow.
The name of the book, once more, Wise Mind, Open Mind. And thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Very
Appreciate
interesting, yeah.
All right, we're going to step away for a sponsor segment right now, but when we come back, a very well-known home in LA is on the market. Who can afford it? It's pretty pricey. We'll talk about it next.
And if you have something to say, you can tweet us anytime. Send it to Let's Talk Live DC. We'll be right back.